Hello dear students, welcome back again to Chinmoyee's biology channel. So this is the second part of respiration. Today we are going to discuss about the structure of respiratory system. I hope you have already gone through the previous episode of respiration. So I am putting the link above as well as in the description box below. Please go through the first part of respiration so that your second part learning will be much easier. So let's get started with today's episode of respiration.
So last day we have completed with aerobic and anaerobic respiration, and we know that energy is generated or produced during the respiration. Now we are here to talk about the different organs for the uptake, and we can say that animals have evolved different organs for the uptake of oxygen from the environment, whereas for the exhalation of carbon dioxide, that is getting rid of carbon dioxide. Now terrestrial animals, we all can breathe the oxygen in the atmosphere, whereas the animals who are in water, they inhale the dissolved oxygen in water. Right. So observe a fish in an aquarium. They open and close their mouths and gill slits. So if you are observing a fish, you can see that they are opening and closing their mouth and their gill slits or the operculum which covers the gill slits. So behind their eyes also they open and close. So are the timings of opening and closing of the mouth and the gill slits coordinated? So are they happening? So what does it mean? Coordinated means are they happening at the same time? Or they are happening at the different time? No, when the mouth is open, then only the operculum also moves. Just observe that in an aquarium. So count the number of times the fish opens and closes its mouth in a minute and compare this to the number of times you breathe in a minute. So we as terrestrial animals, how many times in a minute we are inhaling and exhaling, and how many times in a minute the fish in an aquarium is inhaling. So why this difference is there? So since the amount of dissolved oxygen is fairly very low compared to the oxygen in air, so we are getting abundant oxygen in air, so we can breathe. Our breathing rate in aquatic animals is very fast compared to we or the terrestrial animals. So fishes take in water through their mouth and force it past the gills where the dissolved oxygen is taken up by the blood. So they are taking in water through their mouth, and what they are doing, they are releasing the water from their gills. How? That oxygen is absorbed by the blood or the blood vessels near the gills, and they are releasing or exhaling we can say that they are exhaling their carbon dioxide and they are absorbing the dissolved oxygen in their blood by the gills. So this is the process in fishes. Now terrestrial organisms, terrestrial organisms use oxygen in the atmosphere for respiration. This oxygen, what is it done? It is absorbed by different organs in different animals. All these organs have a structure that increases the surface area which is contact with oxygen rich atmosphere. So there is a surface area which is greatly in contact with the atmosphere, since the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide takes place across the surface. So this surface is having fine and delicate surface, and in order to protect the surface, it is placed within the body so that there have to be passages that will take in air to this area. So there is an organ inside our body or any other terrestrial animal's body. So there the air should be taken in by some organs. So there is a mechanism of moving the air in and out of this area where the oxygen is absorbed. Okay, so in our body, oxygen is absorbed in lungs. So there is a full mechanism, there is a full structure from the atmosphere, how directly to the lungs the oxygen is carried. We are going to discuss that. So what today's topic is, we are going to discuss about the structure of the lungs or the structure of the respiratory system. So what we are starting with? We are starting with the nostrils. So air is taken into the body through the nostrils. The air is passing through the nostrils, is filtered. Fine hairs that line the passage, right? And the passage is also lined with mucus, which helps in this process. So why mucus is there in this full passage? Because when you are inhaling the air is having dust, it is having several bacterial content, all the microorganisms, what all are there will stick into the mucus lining, and pure air will reach the lungs. So from here the air passes through the throat into the lungs, rings of cartilage are present in the throat. So why cartilage is having rings? Because so that it should not collapse, right? So now we will move on to this structure of human respiratory system in the next slide. Okay. First, let us read this box, then we will move on to the structure of respiratory system. So here, now we all know that using hookah, bidi, gutka, that they are all harmful, but why? So using tobacco directly, any product of tobacco in the form of cigars, cigarettes, bidis, hookah, gutka, etc. is very much harmful. And use of tobacco, most commonly it affects the tongue, the lungs, the heart and the liver. So how it is affecting? The smokeless tobacco is a major risk factor for heart attacks, strokes, pulmonary diseases and several forms of cancer. So there is a high incidence of oral cancer as they are chewing, and that is a very poisonous thing in India due to the chewing of tobacco in the form of gutka. So stay healthy and say no to all the tobacco products. So it is a very important caution that we are being given, that no gutka products, no tobacco products should be taken, chewed or smoked. So say no to this. Now we will move on to the respiratory system. Now, this is the human respiratory system. Now, we have started our journey from the atmospheric oxygen we are taking through the nasal passage or nostrils. So, through the nostrils, it is entering. So, here we get the pharynx, then the larynx or the voice box. Then it is moving down the trachea. So, trachea is a cartilaginous ring-formed part where it is made of rings. So, it is made up of cartilage. And why the ring-like structures are there? So that it should not collapse. Okay. So, if it is normally plain, made up of plain muscles and all, it would have collapsed. So, it is made up of ring-like structure. So rings of cartilage are there. Then they move down and they enter the each lungs and they branch into bronchi. The bronchi are again branched into bronchioles, and in this bronchioles we are having alveoli or alveolar sacs are there. Okay, so this bronchioles, from the bronchioles they give rise to this alveoli. So these alveoli are the center of diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide because they are richly supplied with the blood capillaries. So is it clear? So they are richly supplied with blood capillaries, and there only the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide occurs in the lung and the blood cells. Okay, so this is where the respiration is happening at the cellular level. So let us see what they have written here. This is the structure and this is very important. Please draw and practice this label diagram for your exam. So if you are having your any other book also, see which diagram is clear for you, go to it, practice, label all the important parts of the respiratory system. So lung, ribs, diaphragm, this is a muscle which is just under the lungs and below the rib cage. So it is separating the respiratory system with the digestive system here. So digestive system starts just below the respiratory system, and we can just separate it with this sheet of muscle called the diaphragm. So what is there? Let us see here. Now within the lungs, the passage divides into smaller and smaller tubes which finally terminate in balloon-like structures which are called alveoli. So the singular is alveolus. The alveoli provide a surface where the exchange of gases can take place. Is it clear? So alveoli, what are they? They are balloon-like structures which are singular is alveolus, and they are the site of gaseous exchange. The walls of alveoli contain an extensive network of blood vessels. So they are having a huge network of blood vessels, and as we have seen in earlier years also, when we breathe in, we lift our ribs and flatten our diaphragm. So when we have studied in previous years, we have studied inhalation, exhalation or expiration and inspiration. There we know when we breathe in, our ribs and that we lift our ribs and our diaphragm flatten and the chest cavity becomes larger. But when we exhale, our chest cavity becomes smaller and the diaphragm will not flatten, it will just curve. Okay, so because of this, air is sucked into the lungs and fills the expanded alveoli. Okay, so the blood brings carbon dioxide from the rest of the body and release into the alveoli. And the oxygen in the alveolar air is taken up by the blood. So the blood which is bringing carbon dioxide from the rest of the body is released in the alveoli, whereas the oxygen in the alveoli sac, it is taken up by the blood. So the exchange is taken up here. And through the blood vessels, it is transported to all the cells of the body. Is it clear to everyone till here? So dear students, if you're having any doubt, please do write in my comment box, but I'm trying my best to teach you in a lucid and systematic manner. Please follow my classes. So during the breathing cycle, when air is taken in and let out, the lungs always contain a residual volume of air. So there is sufficient time for oxygen to be absorbed and for the carbon dioxide to be released. So there is some residual amount of air which is present in the breathing cycle. So there is some sufficient amount of time for the oxygen to be absorbed and the carbon dioxide to be released. Now, every time we keep on telling that smoking is injurious to health. Why? So lung cancer is the most common cause of death in the world, and the upper respiratory tract is provided with small hair-like structures called cilia. So these cilia, they remove germ, dust and harmful particles. Just now I have told you while I was discussing about the respiratory system structure, what happens when you are smoking a lot, the hair is destroyed and the germs, dust, smoke and other harmful chemicals, they enter the lungs, they create lung infection and which lead to lung cancer even. Okay, so this is why smoking is injurious to health. They can give you the heading like give reason why smoking is injurious to health. You can tell that they destroy the cilia in the upper part of the respiratory tract and which helps to remove the germs, dust and other harmful particles. So that's why smoking, chewing gutka, bidis and all, it's very much injurious to health. Is it clear? Now, here we move on to this part. Now, when the body size of the animals is large, the diffusion pressure alone cannot take care of oxygen delivery. So, what are all required? So, the diffusion pressure is not at all here sufficient to do the oxygen delivery. So, instead, the respiratory pigments take up oxygen from the air. So respiratory pigments are there in blood and they carry it to different tissues which are deficient before releasing it. So in case of human beings, what is the respiratory pigment? The respiratory pigment is hemoglobin and also told as Hb. So in humans, the respiratory pigment is hemoglobin, which is a very high affinity for oxygen. So wherever it sees oxygen, it binds to oxygen, and therefore after binding to oxygen only, it is carried to different parts of the body. So this pigment is present in the red blood cells. So as the red blood cells are moving throughout the body and hemoglobin is present in the red blood cells, so oxygen is also transported to different parts of the body through this carrier, through this hemoglobin, and hemoglobin is having high affinity for oxygen. Now carbon dioxide is more soluble in water than oxygen is, and hence is mostly transported in the dissolved form in our blood. Right, so carbon dioxide is also present. It is soluble in water, more soluble in water than oxygen, and hence it is dissolved in our blood, and it is again through the alveolar exchange. It is deposited in the. We can say it transported to the lungs, and from there again it is exhaled out. Is it clear? Now here are a few questions that would be your homework. Then in the next slide I'll be discussing them. Now, a few questions are here. It will be your homework. So, please do this homework. Write in your answer sheet. All answers have been discussed above only. So, what advantage over an aquatic organism does a terrestrial organism have? Just now I have discussed it very clearly with the first experiment what we started, that fishes are in aquarium and we terrestrial animals, how we breathe, how our rate of breathing varies from the aquatic being. So what advantage over an aquatic organism does a terrestrial organism have with regard to obtaining oxygen for respiration? Is it clear? You just need to write it on your own. What are the different ways in which glucose is oxidized, provides energy in various organisms? This also have been discussed earlier. How is oxygen and carbon dioxide transported in human beings? So how is it transported in human beings? We have discussed about the alveolar sac, about alveoli, how there are a rich supply of blood capillaries, and how the oxygen and carbon dioxide is transported in human beings. Now, how are the lungs designed in human beings to maximize the areas for the exchange of gases? So this also, while teaching the structure of the lungs, I have discussed. So if you are unable to write the answers, please do write in my comment box so that I can come up with the answers in the next video. So still then, stay tuned, stay updated with all my lessons. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, subscribe, share it with your friends, and whenever I'm putting the new updates, you will be knowing that whatever updates I'm putting, you will get the notification first. So the next lesson will be on transportation in human beings. So you just need to wait for a few days for the next lesson to come. So transportation. So don't forget to see the previous videos of life processes. I'll be here up. I'll be showing you in the end screen what all life processes lesson I've already taught. So stay tuned, stay updated with all my lessons. Thank you.